friends. Now, you may remember earlier on this year that I got to go away to LA and I got to see the guys from Romwad, which was really cool. Got to record some routines with them. I also got to go and see the guys from The Human Garage. Now, The Human Garage is a wellness and movement specialist facility near Santa Monica, just off LA's beach. And I first heard of them when Ben Greenfield mentioned them on his podcast. They have a very progressive, very forward-thinking and different alternative view of human anatomy and wellness in general. I thought it would be interesting for me to pay them a visit, so I got in touch, and very kindly they let me go down and use the facility. It ended up being around about a 2 to 2.5 hour procedure. We were supposed to sit down and podcast while I was out there, but then the guy who played Superman in the 2005 movie came in, so he took precedence. But this facility deals with NBA stars, NFL players, doctors, Hollywood movie stars. They literally have got one of the hottest spots in all of LA. I'm very, very fortunate to have been able to go and see them. I wanted to get Garry, who is the co-founder, on the podcast to just try and explain where this very popular, very alternative thinking success has come from. And I think he manages to do it today. So I'm not going to take it any further. I'm going to let Garry speak for himself. One final thing, if you are in LA and you do want to check out The Human Garage, they haven't sponsored this episode at all. However, the waiting list is incredibly long if you want to see them. But if you mention Modern Wisdom when you book for your consultation application, they will bump you to the top of the list. I'm going to be really interested to hear some feedback about this one. So don't forget, get at me at Chris Willex on Instagram, Twitter, wherever it is that you want to get in touch, or modernwisdompodcast@gmail.com. But for now, on to the show. Garry, welcome to Modern Wisdom.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Sitting here in Southern California, nice and sunny. We've been having a little bit of a heat wave out here.
Well, it's not too bad in the UK for once either, actually. I'm going to guess, based on my experience when I was out with you guys, the weather is not going to be quite the same. But we'll take what we can get in England at the moment.
For sure. It's really good having you out here. It was really interesting. I just wish we had more time with you.
Yeah, me too. It's LA is one of those places. It's kind of like a hot spot for wellness, and you know, it pushes the forefront and the boundaries to a degree of treatments and of I mean, weed is legal out there at the moment. Cannabis is legal, and you know, it seems like it's very progressive on all fronts. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, I think it's really a progressive in all fronts. I mean, I'm from Canada originally, and in Vancouver, we're a bit more liberal in all aspects of things. But down here, you've just got a collection of both athletes, professional, otherwise Olympic athletes. So you have a little bit more of the treatment talent and the thought processes and the modalities that are out here. So you just get a bit more of everything. That's all. Yeah,
I get that. So you are the co-founder of The Human Garage.
Yes, my wife is my co-founder. She is the boss. She signs all the checks. I've learned through submission to be very nice to her.
Fantastic. Well, you don't want your paycheck cut. That's exactly what happens with my business partners sometimes. If I've pissed him off for a little while, I'll find out that he's got a bunch of my paychecks sat in the safe.
For sure.
So.
But we have a whole variety of people, as you know, that come out here. So we have people from all over the world, including UK is our third largest draw market. So we have quite a bit of people come from the UK out to Venice Beach to see us.
So take everyone through at home who hasn't heard of The Human Garage. Take us through the story, where you started, what your ethos is, where you are now, and what you do.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, it's a little bit of a journey, but one of the best ways for people to get the whole story is to listen to some of the backgrounds. I mean, there's a number of different reports and media outlets that we've reported to. It started from in the short form, the time that we have, it started with me being a professional bodybuilder back in the 80s. And I fell under a 600-pound squat. And from that point forward, the rest of my adult life, I've been in one form of therapy or another trying to resolve that. And I was using exercise, stretching, and chiropractic, physical therapy, Egoscue, Rolfing, Feldenkrais method, and anything and everything to keep my body out of pain. And I was always in from my early 20s through to my mid 30s, I was in a 2 to 4 pain every day. But towards the end of my 30s, that started being more like a 6 to 9 pain every day. So after being through every form of therapy, literally known to mankind, not only here, but all through Europe, all through Asia. And I was just determined to find a way to solve my issue. And I realized that if I didn't understand enough to tell people to communicate my issue, every time I went to another modality, they had another way of looking at it. So I had to find a unified way of communicating what my problems were. So I looked for foundations in chiropractic and as physical therapy to try and help explain my problem. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Chris, but if you go from doctor to doctor with a chronic issue of any kind, having to explain yourself and go through their process each and every time, it gets pretty tedious. And after hundreds and hundreds of these, you just start learning the language. So as we learned the language of chiropractic and physical therapy, we went to the next step, and I was just trying to really solve my issue. So I sought out the top 10 people in probably every industry you can imagine and went to them wherever they were in the world. And towards the end, as I got into my 30s, my back would be going out once or twice a year, but it got to a point where it was starting to go out every month or two. And at the end of it, it was like 10 times my back went out, and I would be out for about 2 weeks at a time. And so I was in bed 22 weeks towards the end of my journey. And that's where the foundation is, where I said something has to change, because you may or may not experience this or have any relationship to this, but at some point I didn't want to kill myself, but I really didn't want to be alive anymore. It was just a excruciating pain.
I can imagine. I can imagine it's very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and then neurologically it gets stressful too, because the pain itself starts become the pain.
Well, yeah, it'll start to repattern. That's correct, isn't it? Especially with back pain, I'm right in thinking that as you get back pain, you become more susceptible to further back pain.
Correct. Yeah, and it's because your whole body's trying to organize and keep itself aligned and working in gravity, and that's really what the challenge was. Is that we were looking at the body the wrong way, or in my opinion, most of the industry has looked at the body the wrong way, and that's part of the reason why we have so many people that are in rough shape.
Okay, so that's the setup, I suppose. Who was it that you went to go and see? You said that you went to go and see a number of experts around the world. Can you remember who they were?
Yeah, I just don't feel it appropriate to call out the people, but nothing worked. So,
oh dear.
If I had a smashing success with somebody, I'd maybe want to call it out. But this just basically, and it wasn't the practitioners, it's just the way that we were approaching the body. Each modality learns how to help the body with its background and its own view of the body. And if you don't fit in any one of those boxes, and there's a number of people out there that are going around from practitioner to practitioner and from modality to modality, and it's just, and they trade off a little bit of success or a little bit of pain reduction, but then they have to go somewhere else. And that's typically what happens. People just get pushed around from therapy to therapy until one time that they're just no longer able to do it anymore. And that's generally what happens to people today.
Yeah, I can understand that. So where do you go from there? You've spent enough time with the doctors that you feel like you could do their job for them. And what comes after that?
Well, there's a number of different things. So I was using whatever therapy I could to manage my own pain and discomfort. And people always ask, what kind of pain was it? It was back pain, neck pain. It was generalized discomfort. It was something where I would have ribs going out all the time. My neck would go out all the time. And there just seemed to be no solution for it. So at one point, of all the places I travel in the world, and I'm literally meeting all through Europe and all through Asia. One of the places that I found a guy in Orange County, which is about 45 minutes south of where I am right now, and he had a neuromuscular therapy that he was using to make Olympic runners run faster. And that therapy got me up and over the hurdle. And as long as I did it twice a week, I was virtually out of pain. Now, I still had high levels of discomfort, but you know, when you've been in pain for a long time, a day or two without pain is just, you'll take any win you can get.
Vast difference, right?
Yeah. And that therapy was got me out of pain. I used that. We at the time it was called brain body calibration. I looked at the guy who was doing the therapy. He was a PhD in medical science, kinesiology, and pain management. And I looked at him and said, he's about 10 years older than me. He's probably going to die before me. I don't mean that to be facetious, but I'm looking at saying this is the only therapy I've had in 20 years that keeps me even stable. I'm going to need somebody else to do this. So I convinced him to go off and hire. We started up the Rubenstein Centers, and we hired 5 doctors, 40 therapists, thereabouts. And we used that as a platform to start and expand his thought process, which was a neuromuscular therapy. And like I said, the therapy got me out of pain, but I had to do it twice a week. And I became a victim of yet another problem, which was the fear of pain. So I was out of pain. I had to go on a vacation. And I knew that within the 2 weeks that I was going to be gone, that I would be in pain before I got back. And I just couldn't get myself to leave because I couldn't get myself to go into that level of pain again. And that's where I realized that my solution was to manage my pain through treatment wasn't a good solution. I needed to find an answer. And so as we looked to additional modalities to try and bring them in to help me understand what to do next, my partner at the time just, he said it was my name on the door, and it was. And his Rubenstein Centers. And he said, so no, this is a modality that's staying here. So at that point, I decided to leave and continue my journey and find a way to get myself permanently out of pain. And that's what led to the Human Garage.
Wow. So what was it specifically that you think was the difference between the most recent treatment that we've just been discussing there and everything that you'd tried previously? Because as you say, it didn't necessarily fix the discomfort, but it did fix the pain. And that's a pretty big step to take at the beginning. So can you identify what it was about that treatment that was different? Yeah.
So the treatment we were using previous to this, if you looked at it, I mean, people have seen it online. You see 2 or 3 people standing around a table. It kind of looks like ART, but the intention was much different. We had basically there's been 2 fundamental beliefs that have been with us since the day we started. The first one was the human body is designed to heal itself. And if it is designed to heal itself, we either have to stimulate it into doing something or stimulate it into not doing something and just let the body figure itself out. That's the one primary belief that we had. And the second one was I didn't believe that I was unfixable. I didn't believe that I was the only one that everybody I knew that had to continue doing therapy for the rest of my life. So with that foundation of belief, I literally started working in a garage, and it was my garage here in Venice Beach, and I had a PT that I was working with, and we were just experimenting, and we were just following a series of what seemed at the time dumb ideas or just illogical ideas. And we had a series of discoveries which led to how the body was managing itself in gravity, basically. And when we had figured that out, all of a sudden we'd done a very specific release on one of the adductors in my right leg, and I stood up straight for the first time in my life without any tension. It was a very bizarre experience, but that's what let us believe that there's more to this than what we learn in school. There's more to this than what we've been educated about, and it started opening up this process of always looking for a better way and always investigating.
Okay, so did you do, during this period when you were developing the Human Garage, did you do any formal training? Did you go and do physiotherapy education? Did you do any biomechanical work or anything like that? Or was it kind of learn as you go?
Well, it depends what you consider to be formal training. I've spent 25 years studying, educating, hiring people to train me, paying for training, going for courses and seminars. I mean, heck, I started a business with a PhD in medical science and had 5 doctors and dozens of therapists defending his science. So yes, there's a lot of education, but the formalized education, and most people can relate to this. You go to school, you learn a bunch of stuff, then you go off and you go into your practice or into your career, and you use almost nothing that you learn in school. And it's not really no different in healthcare. A lot of the education comes from being out there working with people and seeing live results.
Yeah, that's totally correct. I guess the letters in front or behind your name they're really just a fail-safe for someone who doesn't know you, that says, I have the minimum required education that someone should do to be able to practice what you think that you want from me.
Yeah, I'm the least trained or educated person here. I'm serious. I mean, I have actually technically, outside of nutrition training and supplement training, I've taken courses on biomechanics and fascia and stuff like that. But those are more interest courses that you would take as a practitioner. But for the most part, yeah, my training came from the street. But what that allowed me to do is ask a lot of dumb questions, Chris. And when you ask dumb questions, you get smart answers. And like for example, let's just jump off the deep end. Where do we start off with? I looked at it and said, okay, I have a problem. And my background, just so you know, is when I got out of school in the 80s, you could go out and be a doctor for $150,000 a year. You could go and be a lawyer for about $200,000 a year. Or you could go into the wireless industry and technology and make $750,000 a year. So I did what any young man would do. Went into wireless. Yeah. Went into technology. And yeah. I went where the money was. But as I started getting more and more problems as sick or more dysfunctional, I started organizing more of my life around my dysfunction. So in other words, if I'm going to a telecom conference in Miami and I had a choice between Miami and California, I'd take the one that had a health conference somewhere around that time. And I started double dipping in my travel because I was really trying to figure out, what the issue was. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about asking stupid questions is I got to, as I said, let's dive off the deep end. I got to ask the biggest one, which is the brain in charge of the body? And, fundamentally, scientifically, that's not true. It's a command center, but it's not the command center. And if it was a command center, Chris, then why is it then when a baby's being developed that the heart beats before the brain is developed?
That's interesting. So what do you mean about the brain not being in control?
Well, it's not in charge. Okay. It's a control center. Yeah. So it's not, if you think of your body, like we've contextualized this experience of being human, and we try to make analogies so we feel grounded in those analogies. Like we say, our brain is like a computer. Well, let me give you another reference point. How about your body is like a computer and your brain is like a CPU? It runs programs. The brain is always analyzing the internal and external environments imposed upon us and adapting us to the environments. And the latest research on the vagal nerve shows that 90% of the information goes up the vagal nerve to the brain. Again, that's another indicator that maybe the brain isn't in charge. And so the world of science and medicine starts to split right there. Either the brain is in charge of the body, or the brain is just another organ that's part of the body's operation. And if you say the brain's in charge of the body, then the body's a meat suit. And then that's where traditional medicine and thought processes go down. But there's this whole new world of people that are saying, hey, there's way more to this than we think. Like, for example, your fascia, which we were working on when you were here, Chris, is 100 trillion cells. Your brain is 100 billion cells. That's 1,000 times, that's 1,000 stomachs in your head, in your fascia. Your brain your fascia is 1,000 times more organically dense than supposedly the command center in the body. And if you think about the fascia from the inside of your skull to the inside of your feet, right on your toes, it's a complete sheet of material, connective material. And I'll give you a way to reference it. Think about that material. It's all one big sheet, and in there's pockets. And in those pockets lie muscles, tendons, and bones, and organs. So basically, if you think about it that way, that's more of a true representation of the body. And the body has all these input systems or these intelligent systems that have to work together, and they're interdependent. And each one is dependent upon the other one. Like even the brain It's dependent upon your senses to give you information. So one of the things we get here with a lot of people is they'll have a neurological, like a vestibular inner ear balance issue, and their brain perceives that they're falling over. Well, if you have a vestibular issue and you're trying to do body work or chiropractic work or alignment work or train yourself or get your glute to fire, it's not going to fire. Because neurologically, the brain has the wrong information and the body acts accordingly. So the idea is that we can't separate mechanics from neurology, from organ function. These are all have to be looked at together. And the problem with our current system of evaluation and treatment is they're all broken apart.
Okay, I understand. I've self-myofascial release to one degree or another is like a mainstay of almost all strength sports, right? Almost all sports in general. Pretty much every, from casual to professional sports person's going to have a foam roller or a cross ball or whatever in their kit bag, right? So
sure,
to one degree, people are aware that the fascia is important, but it sounds like you're putting a lot more emphasis on it than previously had been. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we don't have the time on this podcast to dig into it, and if people want to listen, there's a lot more where I've gone into this into deeper fashions. But basically, you think about it this way: the fascia is completely wraps the body. It's super intelligent. Information travels beyond the speed of light, faster than you can feel it. Like if you were to sit there right now and you clench your right jaw, you'll feel it in your right foot the second you clench your right jaw. The problem is that a nerve signal takes about 1.5 seconds to make that same distance transit. And so if you really look at it, is the way that we are getting information that our brain and our body operates on, is it really what we're told? And the answer scientifically is coming up no and no and no.
So you think that it's something to do with the fascia that's communicating, is that right? Like the fascia's communicating signals?
It does. There's no question about it. It takes 1.5 seconds for a nerve signal to go from the foot to the brain back to the foot again. So when you walk off a curb and you hit a sharp rock, how can you move so fast? In medicine we say in science we say, oh, it's a reflex, like the ganglion reflex. But that's an unintelligent movement. If I hit my knee, a doctor hits my knee with a hammer, my knee is going to jolt, right?
Yeah.
But if I step off a curb and I have zero drop shoes and I step on a rock and I jump and I move intelligently, that's not the same response as a doctor hitting my knee with a hammer. So the question is, a nerve signal cannot travel to the brain that fast. So how is that signal getting there?
Yeah, good question. Good question.
Well, so our hypothesis is it's fascia, and we deliver it every day by, we can demo it in just 10 seconds while you're sitting here on a table. But the whole point is, let's just say this, without getting into the particulars and having catfights about what is and what isn't. Let's just say that the information that we have doesn't adequately explain the experiences that we are currently living in. And if that's the case, then that just opens the door to look and investigate. And the human garage is, we recognize that there's a truth in every single modality that's out there. And that we have MDs, we have chiropractors, we have nutritionists, we have naturopath doctors, we've got body work, we got PTs and neurologically trained trainers. We've got every form or every discipline that helps the human body into one location.
You were very well. You were very well armed with different practitioners while I was there. There was about, I think, maybe 6 people upstairs, all of whom were from a different background or a different discipline. And then at one point, I think about four of them were working on me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other part too, is that the body, we can get into that too, but the body just, it's not the way that we think it is. And again, if we open up that question, that thought process, you start to investigate and look at more. So part of the reason why there's 4 people working on you is that there's 3 distinct regions of the body: the lumbar, the thoracic, and the cervical. And each of those regions has its own little ecostructure, things that it does that's important, like pressure relief valve. Your head has a pressure relief valve, it's your ears. Your lumbar has a pressure relief valve. That's your backside. And your diaphragm itself, at the top of the diaphragm, has 2 pressure relief valves, one with the esophagus and one with the arteries. And And the body is always trying to balance the pressure and the mechanics. And what you experience when you're there, there's three of us working on you. You're standing up, and there's three people touching you in different areas of your body. And what we're doing is stimulating a response, and we're asking your body to figure itself out.
Yeah, for just as a brief segue here, if anyone is listening on iTunes, you're going to have to imagine this, or Spotify, wherever you're tuning in. However, if you are on YouTube, I'll make sure that Video Guy Dean overlays all of the footage, all of the imagery that I got while I was having this treatment in Human Garage. So head to Modern Wisdom on YouTube to check that out if you want to see just what Gary's actually talking about here. But it does look a little bit like if it's a still image, it looks a little bit like an army of people are maybe fighting me. But if you see a video, it's a number of people twisting, right? There's a twisting motion going on.
Yeah, yeah. And what we're doing is we're providing fascial inputs to different regions of the body. And the reason why we do this is actually the interesting thing, Chris, is because people that have no reference to us, they're like, "Why are you doing therapy standing up?" And I'm like, well, it's pretty simple in my mind. We're meant to be standing and walking in gravity. So if I want my body to act in a certain way, the best thing to do is put it in its natural environment, let it figure itself out. I looked at the human body and said this, again, asking dumb questions. I looked at it and said, okay, if I'm going to fix myself, I'm going to approach it like a tech problem, like I did everything else. And I said, what's my goal? I have back pain, neck pain, I have bloating, I have brain fog. I have pain in my feet. I want to be able to stand and walk without pain and dysfunction. And at that point, that's all I was saying. I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm going to play sports again for the first time in 2 decades.
What sport
cool.
are you going to choose to play?
I don't know. I've been trying to make a decision, which I go back to, but I'm such a fan of golf, but I want to do something team-based, so maybe it's some volleyball.
You've got the build, having been around you for a little while, you've got the build for someone a little bit bigger than a golfer.
I know, it's just that little white ball. It's such a pesky thing, It's like all I want it to do is get in the hole, and all it does is fight me.
Yeah. I've felt that pain before as well.
So the strongest action, I looked at it and said, okay, what is it? What are the things that are imposed on the body? And literally, I wrote down like this: gravity, atmospheric pressure, emotional stress, sleep deprivation, dehydration. I went through it and list all the things that were potentially wrong in my body or that were wrong, and only to find out that the first two had never been thought about in 3,500 years. We've never considered our body's ability to adapt, to compensate around atmospheric pressure and gravity. And since those are the two factors that the single largest imposing factors on a human condition is atmospheric pressure and gravity, and in 3,500 years, we've never considered that at any form of therapy, mechanics, sports mechanics, in any way, shape, or form. That just doesn't seem logical to me. And so when we looked at that, we said, well, what happens when we put the body in gravity? And what we found out, as you saw, Chris, is a very unique thing happens. The body's strongest action of a human existence is our ability to adapt or compensate. And we're great at compensating. Now, the thing is, when we put the body in gravity and we give it inputs, the body has to adapt to our inputs in gravity, and the adaptation is a unification between the three areas of the body. And once that happens, everything else starts to just work better.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I remember when we sat down, I remember you discussing the spiral of gravity going down and how that can affect different areas of the body. I remember you speaking about the atmospheric
Correct.
pressure as well.
Yeah.
So how do natural forces like pressure, air pressure, and gravity, how do they unprime the body, or how do they prime the body for injury, should I say, or how do they unprime it for being optimal?
Right. Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to decide how far we go into these discussions.
As far as you want, Gary.
Yeah, we do have a time restriction though. So we got about 30 minutes left, right? So
yeah.
So basically, imagine this: you're if you've never held a gyroscope, I encourage people to just hold one for once, because you put a little gyroscope the size of your palm in your hand, and you hold it in your arm straight out, and your whole body will want to turn around it. It's bizarre. But basically, we live on the planet Earth. Earth spins at 1,000 miles an hour, and that creates a centrifugal or spin gravity. and it travels at 66,000 miles an hour around the sun. So it's another gravitational force. And what we're doing is we're standing against it. And gravity is not just pulling us down, it actually pulls us and slightly torques us. And depending on our orientation and where we are, hemispheres, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, there's a slight difference. At the equator, there's a difference because gravity is imposing a different force on us in those in those areas. So when we're in the northern hemisphere and we're being pulled down, typically you're going to have a little bit of a pull from your left shoulder to your right hip. So you're pulling and rotating into your right a little bit. And that's why the most common injuries, 80% of people, they tend to have injuries in the same generalized areas. And that's because we have the same basic forces applied upon us.
So 80% of people in the northern hemisphere have got an injury which is left shoulder or right hip. Is that correct?
No, they got a tension pattern left shoulder to right hip.
Okay.
Usually, yeah. So we have a little joke here at the garage. We say that murderers are silent, but victims scream. And what I mean by that is that the tight muscle is the murderer. You don't feel it. It's silent. But what you feel is all the muscles reacting to it, all the screaming from all the muscles that are trying to resolve the one issue, the one muscle being tight.
That's the referred pain, so to speak, right?
Yeah, referred pain or reaction to. So typically people are tighter on one side. Most people can tell you I'm tighter on my right side or my left side. And most people are tighter on one side of their body. And the injuries typically happen on the other side because the body's compensating around it. But what I am saying is that 80% of people have the same basic tension pattern because we do things basically the same way. We tend to throw the ball most of the time with our right hand, right with our right hand. Now, there's lefties too. And there's people that are back and forth, goofy or ambidextrous, but just generally, the majority of the world has the same type of issues. So if the same forces are implied upon the body, then there comes into things like socialization. Do I play a sport? Do I walk? Do I sit down? And all those things just start to change. But after a while, you start to notice patterns. In the physical medicine industry, most practitioners would see they'd have about 25 or 35 appointments a week. 35 is on the top side usually. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see people usually once or twice a week. Twice a week is kind of the norm when you're in a repair status. And so you're talking about somebody having somewhere between 12 and 18 clients a week they see. And they're going to double it up over the course of the month. And they're going to see them a couple times in a month. So they're most likely seeing about 50 to 60 people a month. The Human Garage, and our format's open. We're into the 2,500 to 3,000 appointments a month. So we have such a broader aspect to see things. And since it's an open format, I'm not only a witness as what's happening on my table when I'm working on you, Chris, or where we're working in the corner. I can see all the other people working, what's going on. So my scope of what is normal or what patterns are starts to really enlarge.
I guess your sample that you're taking data from in whatever form you want to say that is wider by a pretty big factor. If you guys are moving through between 2,000 to 3,000 clients a month, and as you said at the beginning, and this is something that I did want to emphasize for people that are listening at home, the range of clients that I saw while I was in there, I think you had a pregnant woman followed by me, then followed by the guy who played Superman in the 2005 movie. Is that right?
Yeah, Brandon Routh. Yeah,
Brandon Rouse, is it?
Rouse. Yeah.
So and you've got NFL players and you've got basketball players and
all sitting there on the same tables right beside each other, going through the same therapy. My general thing is if it works, and it shouldn't be less because you have less money. We're neutralizing therapy costs. So if people pay the same price for the same work that gets done on a professional athlete, gets done on a pregnant lady. We may do different therapies, but
yeah, you might not quite have the same physiological demands, but it's nice. It's certainly nice for people to be able to feel like they get the same level of treatment. I certainly know from personal experience that if you go into some physiotherapy studios, if you've kind of been put in with the apprentice or the master sometimes.
Sure.
Especially when your health's on the line or an injury's on the line and you want to feel like you're getting the best service, it's not a very conducive environment. So definitely not for healing, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting dilemma, Chris, because then, in the world of healthcare, what we do is we put the practitioner, the guy who has the therapy, on a pedestal, and you'll see that even if you go through our media and stuff like that, you'll see podcasts from all my practitioners, doctors, and stuff like that, because this isn't about me, first of all, and second of all, is that it's not a very good strategy to have the access to help people, a limited resource. So I am a limited resource. There's only one of me. And but the idea is to be able to take and have a system that allows my staff, whether they've been here 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or 12 months or a year or 5 years, to be able to deliver get the same end result. And the same end result is, and we found a way of systematically doing that.
So you've been able
to junior practitioners as.
I was going to say, you've been able to expedite your training. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of hands-on. The junior practitioners are the hands for the senior practitioners, and our practitioners are called motion mechanics and torque mechanics. So what happens is you start off as an assistant, and depending on your level of skill, your ability to understand, you move to become a torque mechanic, and then the senior, the most advanced part is a motion mechanic, and then a master motion mechanic. And the difference really is that we encourage our practitioners to be multidisciplined. Like, for example, a master motion mechanic makes more money than a motion mechanic, but the reason why is because they understand the neurological rehabilitation, they understand the chemistry and the supplementation aspect, they understand the fascial work, they understand the chiropractic portion. So they have a wider range of knowledge. But at the end of the day, really all you care about is, as a client, is that you come in, the pain that you have or the issue you have is looked at, understood, addressed, and resolved. And that's what we've been good at. And it's not the Garry Lineham show, for sure. And I'm trying to make myself less and less and less available.
Well, I mean, that's how from a business perspective, that's how you make yourself. How you make the business bigger than you, right? And obviously that's how you allow yourself to scale as well. Yeah. I think what you've touched on, you must hear some skeptical voices in the industry, both from people who are established and defensive, from people who don't understand or aren't willing to understand. But I think what you focused on is correct. If someone comes in and they have a pain or they have a discomfort or they have a problem, and when they leave or at the end of their course of treatment or whatever it is, if that has been reduced, then the method has been effective. And
correct.
Do you think in the industry,
not everybody buys into that, though? Like, I'll give you an example. 25% of our clients are doctors, medical practitioners, chiropractors, physical therapists, surgeons, whatever. And I was dealing with a guy not too long ago. He'd been in pain for about 15 years. And within 45 minutes, he's out of pain, literally out of pain for the first time in 15 years. And I said, he was in, somebody else got him to come in, bought him an initial consultation. He kind of pushed him into going. And he's an orthopedic, by the way. And at the end of it, I just said, hey, how do you feel? He says, interestingly enough, I'm out of pain. And I said, well, let's go forward and let's take this to the next step and let's work this out so that you can have this as permanent solution. Something that you know how to manage. He goes, science hasn't worked out on this. I think I'm going to wait a little while to see how this all shapes up. And I'm like, you got to be kidding. You've been in pain for 15 years. You're now out of pain for the first time in 15 years, and you want to wait and talk to somebody about it?
That's a perfect example for what I was referring to there, which is potentially people dogmatically sticking to whatever their ideology is, whatever their school of thought is, and not permitting themselves to allow the effect of whatever the treatment is to move through them. So, I mean, why?
That's a society, Chris, that's a society thing. So we value in our society time and lineage more than we value results.
that's a lovely little synopsis. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, does it feel sometimes like you guys at the Human Garage, because you are quite progressive, there's a bed of crystals for decharging, which I want to get onto in a second. And there's the talk therapy and 3 practitioners working at once. Do you sometimes feel like that's maybe an easy target for kind of vindictive critics and stuff like that to go after?
I guess it could be. I don't know if it hasn't been so far, and I'll tell you why. Is because publicly we've never told people how we do what we do. We just do it. So the one thing it's hard to argue with, you can't argue with results.
You also can't argue against a process that you don't know what it is either, I suppose.
Correct. Yeah, you can't pick it apart. So and by the way, that's purposely. Like, how do you really care how I did it, or do you just really want to know that it's been done? Because I can spend all this time drawing out the technical aspects and talking about the science of it and back and forth, and our investigation, how we found it, or just want it done. And that's so the idea is that it kind of splits into 2 categories: the people who just really want to get it done initially, and then the ones that have to understand. And if they want to understand, they come in here. We'll explain. We explain to people as they come through the process. We explain everything that we're doing, why we're doing it. We show them the thought process, even if they have some history, like they're a body work or a chiropractor. This is how you would look at it before, correct? This is how we look at it. This is what we're going to do. And we're always there to explain to people. But just generally, as a rule of thumb, I think that the more we try to explain right now, the less credible it sounds. I mean, listen, I was just working, and just before I got on this podcast with you, I had a guy that I'd been working with, and he was an old client. He's been, probably 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, really when we were starting the thought process, right? And so he hadn't been here in about 4 years, somewhere in that range. And he comes back in, and normally looking at him, it would have been, okay, we're going to be here for the next 12 hours of therapy, 6 sessions or 7 sessions, 8 sessions. And in 35 minutes, he walked out better than he had ever walked out of the human garage. And that's a shift, because even for a practitioner who's used to delivering a result, but they know what kind of time and energy it takes to deliver the result, to be in a situation where 20, 30 minutes, they can do more than they used to do in 8 to 10 hours. That's a little hard for people to swallow. And by the way, that's our biggest problem with practitioners today, is training them, is that it just looks too simple.
They can't let go of the tether to their previous education to one degree or another.
Oh, yeah. And this has got to be the worst industry in the world, where people are tethered to education that I've ever seen.
Well, it's interesting. So I was learning about a theory called working from first principles. It's something which Elon Musk does a lot. And it definitely sounds to me like for want of a better term, your lack of education, formal education within the industry, has permitted you to look at these issues in a new light. And, if you guys are doing between 2,000 and 3,000 clients a month, and of those about
it's actually appointments.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So, but that will mean sort of circa 100 to 200 healthcare professionals, if about 25% of them are from the healthcare industry. If you're seeing people once a week or twice a week, something like that, it's a good number of healthcare professionals are coming through the door.
Probably about 750 since we started.
Wow. So I mean that's a significant number of people with. What's that? 750. You do about 5 years in medical school for each of those people. So you're talking on like nearly 4,000 years of study.
Absolutely.
And these people are coming back for one reason or another. They are coming back.
Yeah. Usually it starts off as either skeptical or not, come in here with an issue, solve the issue. Then they usually trial it with a few friends or patients, something like that. And it works out, they just start referring. And that's why we didn't have a website until last year. And we weren't open to the public until last year.
You didn't have a website until last year?
Yeah. There's no point in we have a reputation. People are trying to get here. There's no point in knowing people even further if the waiting list is like 8 months or a year. We had people last year that we were calling them up. We're cycling through. I did a podcast with Ben Greenfield last year. And there was a couple of people, there was about 150 people that still hadn't had some sort of contact with us from here. And we're contacting them. They're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that I'm on that wait list." That's how long it is sometimes. And by the way, we're way better now because we've increased our capacity. But it's been a growing process. Like a year ago, there was only 6 people total that did therapy. Today, there's like 5 people doing therapy.
How many was that? Sorry,
6 last year, and there's about 25 this year.
Okay, and I guess as you've said, expediting the training from being previously, how long was it?
It's 9 to 12 months to have somebody functional, and realistically, 12 to 18 months to be comfortable with I could walk away. Today, that's 75-80% reduced because it's just the tenets of what we do. I wish we had more time to talk about how torque affects the body, but that is the magic of what we do.
The untalking. Well, I mean, that was the buzzword. If I was to take a word away from the session that we'd had, it would have been untalking. And the spiral down. There's a cool YouTube video that I will make sure that Dean overlays in YouTube, and I will put in the show notes below, where a guy pops a flower in a funnel, and he's next to the equator. Have you seen this?
Yes, yeah. That's
so
pretty
he
neat.
pops it in on one side and it spins one way, and he pops it in on the other side and it spins the other way, and then he walks to this line on the floor and puts it on it and pops the water in, and it falls straight down. Our bodies are, I'm not sure what percentage water, but I know that it's a lot. 75% water. There we go. Thank you. That's why I've got you here, Gary. You're just an assistant to deliver me facts about water. Does it sound ridiculous that our bodies would be subject to that as well? Well, I mean, we're not constantly draining, but...
think about it this way. I say this all the time to people. We're 75% water. So we're an aquarium with legs. And if you start, I like to take these wild, extreme comparisons to either show how right or how wrong things are. So basically, every law that governs water on the planet Earth governs the entire inside of your body. And the fact that we think that physics and engineering and natural laws of nature that we should be different is the problem. I mean, and human beings, we're on the top of the food chain. We're the best in the universe. We've grew up thinking we're alone, and no one else in this whole 14.5 billion year universe that goes out hundreds of billions of light years. No one else could be alive. I mean, it's just, think about how ignorant we are when we say stuff like that.
Well, to segue on that, I recently did a podcast with Adam Frank, who wrote a book and recently published a paper on exactly that, what the likelihood is of us being alone in the universe. And
actually, if you just want to go to NASA's website, and you'll see it all leaking out. With UCLA, they just did a report, and they said, no, actually, even in our own solar system, there are thousands of planets in our solar system that have to have life. I mean, they're really reversing the thought process. It's just when you've stuck to a parting line for like 100 years, and then you find new evidence, you don't want to tackle it so quick because...
do you mean in our galaxy or in our solar system?
No, in our solar system, in our galaxy. They're just saying life is everywhere. And this is all new stuff NASA's been releasing over the last 24 months. And it's not big press releases. You just look because they're required to release. So the UCLA NASA report just said that the entire universe is teeming with life.
Okay. Well, I mean,
and that's a big diversion from where we're.
Adam Frank will be very happy to hear that. So I want to cover 2 more topics before we
Sure.
finish up. So first off, I want to talk about how you think that strength and conditioning complement what you're doing, or how they fit into what it is that you guys are doing. We've discussed the fact that the body repatterns movements and moves itself around pain. To me, it would feel, if someone's had pain for an awful long time and has reprogrammed bad movement patterns, it seems difficult to believe that they would be able to be repatterned in the space of 1 hour. Does that make sense?
Yeah, fair enough. So there's structural. So the balance is the energy that my body uses to stand against gravity, and then there's movement. Movement is where those patterns come in, and if you don't rehabilitate motion or movement afterwards, then our bodies are a collection of everything that we have done to date, whether it's movement, whether it's food, whether it's drugs, whether it's psychological, emotional issues. Our body is the scoreboard for everything. And if you could think, maybe we could do one thing for the listeners.
Yep.
If you could take and put your hands on your knees so your thumbs are on the inside. So thumbs are on the inside of knees.
I'm doing it now.
Okay, so turn from your thumb on your one side, your right knee, turn your thumb towards your little finger. So you're turning away from the center of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, and within seconds, you're going to feel your arch tighten up. You're going to feel your quad, your lateralis tighten up, your glute tighten up, and all the way up into the back. Do you get any of that, Chris?
I think, well, I've got sweaty hands at the moment, but yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, so basically what that is applying a little bit of lateral torque in the knee, and then all these muscles, the two lateralis, the gastrocs, the medial arch, piriformis, all tighten up immediately. If you turn it the other way, so that the little fingers are coming to the thumbs, and you hold that, within seconds, your back will release, your quads will release, your legs will release. And that's a side example, by the way, that we have a home care program going to be out in about 2 months. We're partnering with Gwyneth Paltrow, and we're putting it out to the world for free.
You're partnering with Gwyneth Paltrow for a home care program.
Yeah.
That is a big name. That is a really, really big name to have behind a home care program. I mean, it's not one that I would have immediately, I guess. Is Gwyneth Paltrow into a wellness and stuff like that?
Yeah, she has a platform out here called Goop, Goop.
Okay.
Don't ask about the names.
It doesn't sound very nice, does it? But so what does Goop do?
It's a health and wellness platform, but it's for people that are moving towards health and wellness. It's not the same kind of people that we're talking about who are into fitness, nutrition, who can repeat to you what they're, why they're taking a microbiome test and stuff like this. These are more, it says a broader base of people.
Yep.
But it has a big reach. It has, roughly about 50 million people in the reach.
Wow.
And so what we're doing is a home care program, which is in 15 to 20 minutes, you can reduce your own tension and pain in your body by up to 75%. The reason why we're doing that, and the reason I did that with your knees, that's one of the home care activities. And the reason why we're releasing this in this way is that part of the time that we're rolling out and stretching tight muscles when it's really just a torque in a joint. And if you remove the torque out of the joint, the muscles automatically relax. I'll send it over to you, Chris, but I was working with, for those of you guys, football fans, but different football out here.
American,
we have American football. We have the Philadelphia Eagles and Haloti Nada. He's a 345-pound linebacker. And, he's been in the league for 16 years, I think. He's one of those guys that walks really slow from the car to the place. It doesn't move that fast, right? It's linebacker.
He's 345 pounds. I'm surprised he can get out of the car. He's a big old boy.
Big boy, yeah. So we did the torque work on him. And without any warm-up, he ran the 40. He ran it 8 times. He ran it as fast as the day he qualified in the league. And we did no other form of therapy to him. We just removed what was stopping him from performing. So my basic belief is this, is that the body and the muscles are designed to do a job. And the job that they're designed to do, if you remove the restrictions, it'll do it. And so we spend all this time trying to get like my glute to fire harder or whatever. Remove the torque from the muscles and the body will perform accordingly.
So this goes back to one of the first principles that you mentioned, which is that you believe that the body knows what it wants to do and the body's able to fix itself, but sometimes there's inhibitions and these roadblocks that get in the way, and those are manifesting themselves in the fascia, mostly
in the joints, in the fascia, in the joints mostly. And one of the remedies to that is untorquing. Yeah, and if you untorque the muscles, then you get to see what's really happening, because like when we did the knee, you felt a couple muscles starting to tighten up. Well, if you hold that there for 30 minutes, you're gonna want to take a roller and roll out that muscle. But if you just have to turn the knee and provide a counter torque, and that all goes away by itself, then the rolling of the muscle was actually an ill-effective action. It was actually creating damage to the body or tension the body didn't need to have. And that's part of the issue. So like what we've done with our athletes is they stretch between 75 and 90% less once their body's untorqued, and they have a basic untorquing pattern for themselves. And little things like this is like running pro athletes without warming up. I'm not suggesting you do that, but
yeah,
but I, knowing what we're doing, I'm taking a pro athlete who doesn't run, and he's running his fastest time in 16 years just by taking the torque out of the joints.
I mean, it sounds some of the results, some of the claims they're unbelievable.
And the cool part about it is that's because they're all true. And that's a base. When you base our therapy, what you said earlier about skeptical, you can be skeptical about it, but you can't argue with the results. You can argue with why we got them.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, hey. So I wanted to finish off. I know that there will be some healthcare practitioners and also some soft tissue workers, chiropractors, other physiotherapists, and other people who work with people close to them on a daily basis. A lot of my co-hosts on this are in the medical profession as well.
Sure.
And we had a really interesting discussion when you laid me down on a bed that had crystals underneath it. And I just wanted you to try and retell one of the stories that you had to do with the way that people who are practicing on patients can sometimes have they can have a bad time due to the way that the patients are feeling. Yeah, I wanted to hear that because I was fascinated by that.
Sure. I mean, look at you walk into a room. Somebody walks into a room. They're really angry. You can feel it. Sometimes it's like that. Like a friend walks in or a wife or girlfriend walks in the room, you did something wrong, you feel it. So energy is transferred and collected. And there's so much science to prove that's true. To even acknowledge, to say that it doesn't is not right anymore. And so what happens is the body collects and holds on to the energy from people. And so what we've done is we use a lot of techniques that we just don't say to things. They say crystals on the table. I showed you that. That's a little trade secret. We use quartz crystals organized around a table in a very specific fashion to create a net result. And one of them is decompression. And what causes compression is trauma or torque. Same thing. So what we do is, as we started putting the crystals on the tables, the client's treatment would speed up by twice. And the practitioners could do 3 to 5 times more work without feeling the fatigue they would normally feel. And it's basically, again, it's just using something that doesn't sound like it's credible. So we just don't make a big deal out of it. We just do it because it works.
That's interesting. I think there's definitely an implication, no matter whether you think that the solution is quartz crystals on a bed or mindfulness practice or sitting with your thoughts or yoga or anything. I think that there is definitely an implication for healthcare professionals that by one system or another, whether it's socially, psychologically, as you're discussing the mechanism that this particular energy works on, I do think that it is it's an important thing for them to keep in mind that they are dealing with people that are sick and unwell all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that. I mean, I used to get sick going home, and I didn't put hands on people until just a little under 10 years ago. And I wasn't prepared for what would happen when you're working with sick and frustrated and people that have through horrible abuses and sexual abuse and physical abuse and all kinds of injuries and stuff like that. That stuff it's pretty thick and pretty heavy, and having a mechanism to clear it is really important. If you're a practitioner and you don't have a daily routine or routine to clear that stuff, eventually it adds up. And what we're doing is we see practitioners who have been 20, 25, 30 years working with people like that, and we're cleaning up that mess now. It's best that people, if you don't have a routine, to learn one. And a lot of the stuff that we use, Chris, over the next between now and Q1 next year, we'll be publishing a lot of it. I was literally
just about to say. So obviously, you're talking about the home therapy that you'd be doing, which is typically more for patients. For practitioners, will there be any resources that they'll be able to tap into, which will assist them?
Yeah, a couple of things. Again, if it works at home, it usually works in the practitioner environment. So how we organize crystals around the table and different effects, including decompression, charging, the body, energized for both male and female. There's also, for the first time ever in the history of the garage, we're going to be doing outward certifications starting in about 3 months, and we're going to be training torque mechanics. And our intention is to use torque mechanics work really well with chiropractic offices, because the body often, the spine, when it's been torqued for a long time, it gets untorqued. It needs to be adjusted. And so we're going to be certifying torque mechanics out, because the one thing that we have is we have people from all over the world trying to get in. The one thing that we're short on is people to deliver care. So we're going to take the care on the road, and instead of just trying to build a bunch of human garages, we're just going to start training people how to help people as quick as we can.
You'd mentioned that before. Is that going to be a franchising or a licensing, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, so the general mode is that people that are registered torque mechanics will get leads from us, because we have a plethora of leads coming in.
I was going to say, you're not going to be short on lead generation, right?
No, that's not going to be a problem. As a matter of fact, that's part of the reason why we took down our website years ago. It's just that you have to have some sort of control of the flow, and now we want to open it up and give people, like, literally, if you're a chiropractor out there and you want to do this work, you'll be able to do portions of this work by having 2 torque mechanics work with you. And what our chiropractors will tell you is that they have a 75% reduction of force in the adjustment, and the adjustment lasts 3 to 5 times longer when you take the torque out of the body.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think over the coming weeks and coming months, I'll definitely be posting a lot more of your stuff. I think there'll be a lot of people that will be interested in it. Can you tell Can you tell the listeners at home? There will be some people that I know that are listening in LA and not too far from you. Can you tell them where they can find you first online, and then where the practice is? Sure.
Yeah, we're in Marina Del Rey on Beach Avenue, right down in the heart of Venice and Marina Del Rey. You can get us at humangarage.net. And if they are coming in off your podcast, if they put your name in the referral bar, they're not going to get in right away, but they're going to jump to the head of the line. We take care of our clients, the referrals, our media partners first, and their referrals, and then we go off to everybody else after that. So they put your name into our wait list. What we'll do is we'll move them to the front of the wait list.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Garry. So if you're listening at home, Modern Wisdom, when you do your referral, or quote Chris Williamson yourself, I wanted to say as well, Garry, I've actually got the guys behind Essential Oil coming on soon. Essential Oil Wizardry.
You got Dr. Nick, man, he is my favorite. Dr. Nick is a special human being. And there are no oils anywhere in the world like his. We have searched the entire world, and that's why we partnered with Essential Oil.
I know. So I heard him on Ben Greenfield, and I really wanted to get a hold of him after I'd listened to him. It's another, from a similar kind of school as yourselves. It's the sort of thing which does sound contrary and it sounds different, but bottom line results are interesting, and I think it's worthy of further investigation.
Well, the British Medical Journal was the first one, I think, to report on 2 things. Which, because we listen to allopathic, but British Medicine Journal reported on MRSA, seven clients who used Manuka honey, and terminal clients for MRSA. And use Manuka honey to clear it. And the other part too is other than the American Medical Journal, they have lots of references to essential oils frequency. That there's not a bacteria in the world that is resistant to essential oils. So that's one you can you can put in your back pocket and use.
Those are some unbelievable sort of stats there. That's the British Medical Journal talking about Manuka honey and bacteria resistance to aromatherapy oils, right?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. They had 7 patients there who had lesions. They were going to die from MRSA. And at this point, they got nothing left to try whatever. So they used Manuka honey. All 7 of them lived. And there's a whole bunch of things like that coming. Just watch over the next couple of years. What we think is what we've been told and what we think about how the body works, just not that way. And I just encourage people to have an open mind and just investigate a little bit more and keep asking the question why.
I was going to say, do you feel like this is the beginning of the crest of a wave towards a new direction for wellness and for the way that the medical world looks at fixing people?
Absolutely, we are on the forefront. We are breaking new science, new frontiers every single day here. And if we're doing it here, there's other people doing it all over the world. We just don't know about them yet. Maybe we're in a better spot. We get a bit more media here, but whoever you are out there, if you're actually changing the world and doing things that are going to actually benefit the world, just keep doing it and don't listen to people.
Well, hopefully we'll have contacted some of them and they'll have a kindred spirit with yourself on the other side,
sure.
on the other side of the internet. So, Garry, I really appreciate your time. I loved my time when I came out to come and see you. I'm hopefully going to be back in LA not very soon, and I can't wait to come back and see you again.
For sure, absolutely, Chris.
It's been a blast. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.